Hey everybody, and welcome to this CKC free webinar. We are so excited to have you. All of our content for 2022 is from the CRM or Die book that Chaz Ross Monroe and I wrote. If you don't have a copy, totally okay. You can still gain good insight from this webinar. If you have it, we're going to be covering chapter 4 today, so you can go ahead and turn there or look at your notes if you've already read the chapter. Today is all about business processes. So we're going to jump in, but first I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Courtney Kearney, founder and owner of C. Kearney Consulting. We are a CRM and data management firm. Without further ado, let's jump into chapter 4. You have found this webinar, and we have so many other events that I want to let you know about. If you head out to our website and click events, you can see that we also have free chats that are surrounded around the topic of CRM. That is the third Thursday of the month. And then we also have a ton of other webinars or in-person events that you can see if one is in your area that you can attend. We also have some great resources and articles and things like that to check out under our resources. Speaking of resources, I want to make sure that you get all of the great content from today's webinar. If you use your phone to scan the QR code on my screen, visit the website. It is going to direct you to the book information. Again, if you don't have a copy, you can definitely purchase one. You can also check out the sneak peeks that we have provided on each of the chapters. You can access other book resources, spread the word, we'd appreciate it. You can also take a CRM assessment to see where you are in your CRM journey, where your firm is. We would suggest don't just do this once, but do it before or after you've read the book, and then do it once a quarter after that so that you can have some data and analytics on how you're progressing on your CRM journey. It also gives you things that you can focus on and where you should or where you could improve. If you purchase the book, you can get into an exclusive area of additional book resources. So here is just a sneak peek of what all you can get if you purchase. Titling the book CRM or Die might seem a little extreme, but we firmly believe that if your firm leaders do not understand how critical client relationship management is, that your business will cease to exist. The clients are the lifeblood of our businesses, whether they are new or recurring, and we have to have leaders that understand that. So having a fully developed, well-documented process that helps you manage those client relationships is vital. Now, some of you might have been following where we did a contest of which book cover to go with. As soon as we read Kevin Hebblethwaite's quote, we thought that it was very clear that this was the winner for the design. He said, really, we're at risk of an evaporation into irrelevance rather than sudden death. Most clients who depart don't tell us they're doing so. They quietly disappear. The really painful part is that that situation could be happening to us right now without us even realizing it. Hopefully, you are not in that place. Hopefully, you're in a place of, hey, I've got a well-defined CRM. I just want to make sure that we're doing it well. Regardless of where you're at in your CRM journey, we definitely are here to help you. Now, the most important takeaway to get from today is that CRM at its core is not about a piece of technology. So if you're sitting out there going, Courtney, I don't have a CRM technology tool, that's okay. If you do have one and you're not effectively using it or using it at all, that's okay too. Really at the heart of it, CRM is about your process and your people. That is the most important thing that we want you to get from this book, that we want you to get from today's webinar, is that if you are focused on a piece of technology, you've got to shift that focus to your process and your people. Today is all about that process piece. Looking at unlocking your CRM potential, we've broken it into 4 parts: the foundation, preparation, utilization, and thriving. We've already spent the first 3 months of the year talking about the foundation. So in January, we talked about focusing on process and people, understanding your firm's why, and the importance of a well-documented process. Then we talked in February about data-driven decision-making. And then last month in March, we talked about the benefits of client relationship management. If you missed these webinars, they're on our website and on our YouTube, so definitely go and check those out. Now, chapter 4 is all about understanding your internal business processes. Albert Einstein has a famous quote: "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution." When Chaz and I read this, it really resonated because we think that that is where preparation and that second part of unlocking your CRM potential is critical. 90% of our effort should be spent on planning and preparation, understanding our internal processes, and implementation. And that last 10% on execution, on maintenance, so that we get it right up front. Now, if you're saying, oh, wait, I already have a CRM system, I'm already in the trenches, that's okay. You can still pull out and look at the implementation part of it. You can look at the processes. You can look at all of that, even if you already have a system in place. Now, today we're going to talk about documentation. Documentation is where success thrives when it comes to things like scaling or things like handing off to new employees or employees that replace someone else. When we're talking about a long-term piece of success, it is documentation at its core. So we're going to break this down into 5 steps. We're going to map it, identify gaps, review it, improve it, and then monitor it. So let's start with having the conversation of how to map a current internal process. Now, this can be anything. This can be things like, does every employee in the business know where your client management process is? Do they know what it is? Do they know how to follow it? Do they understand the expectations of them? Does everyone know what to do with the contact information? Where to put it? Where to update it? Is every employee aware of what to do with a lead? When pursuits are won, who is notified? Each of this can be a process that you document. A hot topic right now is CX, client experience. Is that documented for you? Now, once you have this on paper, now we can do it fancy with technology. You can do it with a pen and piece of paper. All that's important is you're getting it down on paper, documented, so that everybody can review it together and you can have those discussions. You can understand where everything is at, all the parts and pieces. So you've got to start having those conversations. Now, if you're a department of one, or if you feel like you're a department of one because you either aren't heard, you don't have a voice, you can do this for just you. Now, when you get to the part of identifying gaps and all of those things, you might need to bring in other people, but don't feel like, oh, I can't do this. I can't document the process because I don't have buy-in or I don't have this. You don't have to have that in order to start. You can just look at all these things of like, what do I do? Do I understand our client management process? Do I understand what to do with contact information? Start it for you, and then you can branch out to others. Now, once you have this down on paper, the next piece is to look for gaps. Now, the gaps can be between departments. When we have an opportunity that we win, and then accounting starts that project, there's a breakdown, there's a gap. People have to enter information in both systems, in our pursuit management system and then in accounting. There could be knowledge transfer gaps. So the knowledge that you get from pursuing the project doesn't transfer over to the operations who's going to build or design or engineer that project. When you look at information going from the sales cycle to marketing, to accounting, to operations, what are the gaps that come to the surface? Are there things like you call the project one thing when it's a pursuit, you call it another when it gets to accounting, you call it another nickname when it gets to operations? Is your project naming convention something that you can document? Things like, is there a gap in communication when a project is won? I had the experience where I was giving a presentation on our CRM and the projector stopped working. So accounting came in to help me fix it. And they talked about understanding, or I was talking about understanding what happened when we won an opportunity. So the opportunity converts to a win and an email gets sent to leadership, to marketing, to BD. The IT guy said, well, is there any way that I could be added to that? And I said, well, sure, but can I ask why? Like, I have no problem adding IT at whatever or his name to the email, but I wanted to understand why. There was a gap in him or his department being able to prepare for new projects. So they would get field staff mad in their offices saying, why isn't my job trailer set up? Because we don't even know, we didn't even know that that project existed. Well, closing that gap and putting them on that email notification when we won a project allowed them to be proactive. So they could see who the staff team was, reach out to the on-site people and say, hey, what technology do you need to set up in your job trailer? When will the job trailer be up? When would you like us to come out there? So gaps like that you might not even anticipate, but having those broader conversations, asking accounting, hey, this is our process. Is there any part that would be helpful to your job? Same thing with operations. So looking for those gaps in the process. Step 3, reviewing it. This is where you map out all the individual steps. You look at it and say, okay, this is how I know it. What do you see as part of this? What is your take on what this looks like? This is where it's helpful if you take it from that scratch piece of paper onto something a little bit better. So that can be Excel, Word. Lucid Chart is a great support tool. Miro is another one. You can do something very easy where it's just on PowerPoint slides, but going from here's where, our chicken scratch, as I call it, on pen and paper, and then understanding different triggers or different automations or things like that as you go through the process. Step 4, now you have your process documented, you've gotten buy-in from other places, you've closed up some of the gaps. Now you can do some fun things to improve your process, like automations. When this happens, we can trigger this. When we win a project, we could send that information to accounting, whether that is just an email so they can copy and paste it, or you can send it through an API connector or middleware so that it can get into accounting or get to accounting so they can approve it and put it into their system. Because let's be real, that which has been typed should never be typed again. So you want to shore up some of those reduce or duplicate entry points so that you can improve that process for everyone. Looking at things like using Outlook add-ins or plugins, using card scanners on your phone, using the phone app on your phone to get contact information to where it needs to go. Can you push your contact information to your email platform? Can you push some of your email platform data back into your CRM so you can know when people unsubscribe or open your mailers, things like that? All of that can improve the process. Once you started making these improvements, you're working and you're trucking along, don't set it and forget it. You've got to monitor the process. So you should definitely look at this once a month when you first get started, making sure that those automations are triggering as you expected, those workflow emails are firing. Then after it's implemented and you've got it running, checking in quarterly. You never want it to go longer than a year though. Definitely check in at bare minimum every 6 months. I would prefer every quarter, because you want to make sure that those key components are working. And then you can also look at additional automations, because we know how fast technology changes. So maybe something that wasn't available at the beginning, like we use Zapier. So some of those triggers weren't available, extra filters, things like that, that are now available months later. So definitely always checking up and monitoring that process. And then asking the same people or the same departments that had to say at the beginning, hey, how is this working for you? And you might be surprised. They might say, oh, could you add this one other little thing that would change, like that would help me, that would save me so much time? Or, oops, we relabeled a field and we might have broken some stuff. So checking back in with those other departments and those other players is important as well. And then if you have a CRM manual that is a help for your piece of technology, making sure that you keep that manual up to date is very important. So having your process documented in there, making sure that that stays up to date, whether that's a PDF document, whether that's on your intranet, whether it's stored in your CRM, making sure that all that stays up to date is important. Now, let's look at an example, a real life, how does this play out? We're going to walk through those same 5 steps, but with a real life, tangible example. So this is from my firm. We get together once a quarter because we're all remote workers. So every quarter we all get together in person. And one of the quarters, the meeting topic was centered around our client experience and the journey that our clients take with us. So I stood up in front of the group, I had the pen, I had some Post-it notes, and we went to town documenting. Now this is hard to see, but I wanted to give you an overview of what it looked like. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can look at this in detail. So looking at where do our clients live? They're just out in the world. They're searching for a consultant, they're searching for a CRM product. But who specifically are they? They are AEC marketers, owners, business developers. Looking at some of the things in blue, those are details behind the scene for us. Like how would it, like what happens to trigger these things? People are on Google. They get to our website because of SEO. Some of our partners suggest and push people to us or encourage people to check us out. Now, what converts them, or what's the trigger from going from that to they have found us? That at that point, they become a prospect. So they have found CKC, they landed on our website, they are reading a blog article, they're attending a webinar, they have interacted with us in some way. Then they move on and they become, or they interact with Valerie, our business developer. So she is trying to book a discovery call. She has 7 touches that she bounces between phone calls and emails. And on the 7th touch, she says, hey, totally cool. If you're busy, I'm not going to reach out to you anymore. You'll hear from me in a couple months. I'll check in. It is incredible what happens when you try to break up with people. They go, no. Please keep reaching out. I don't mean to be ignoring you at all. I've just been super busy. I've been on deadlines. I've got proposals, but keep reaching out. But we want to honor people's time. We don't want to be a nuisance. So we have a 7-touch rule. Now we monitor her conversion rate. So of those 7 touches, at what point does she usually convert those touches into a discovery call? It is typically between the 4th and the 5th touch. Now, during the pandemic, it went real low, like 2nd or 3rd, because everybody was, at the beginning at home and inundated with just at home time and trying to figure out how they were going to use that time. So improving their CRM was a good place to start. So looking at that step 3, then you go into 4. If it's a qualified lead, we issue a proposal. Now we went further and said the handoff, those transfer of knowledge that I was talking about, making sure that Valerie and our project manager, who's going to be taking care of the client the rest of the 6-month commitment, has that handoff. So everything that Valerie learned goes to that PM. Now, we want the kicking off of a client to be a positive thing, not a, yay, you gave us the project. The next thing you hear from us is an invoice of payment due. So we have a welcome packet that we send our new clients. Make sure that you have that discussion with your accounting and operations folks as far as around kicking off a project. You want to make sure that the client feels appreciated, that you were chosen. Thank you for choosing us. Here's how we're going to work this process. You never want the first thing that they hear from you after awarding you that project is to get a bill or an invoice. So looking at that part, then we go into the work begins, and then it's time for a renewal. We're 60 days out from the contract being expired. So we issue a renewal, and they either renew and they stay a CKC client, or they become a former client and they don't renew. So that is step one. Just get it down on paper. Get, your Post-it notes, all of that. Then we went to step two. We went into identifying those gaps. What we learned was that there is actually a difference between a prospect and a lead for us. Prospect, general, they've looked at our website. We now know who they are. But a lead is something very different. They have identified that they have a need, that they have shown interest. It's not just a marketer, it's a marketer with a qualified CRM need. Now, that is all language that really helped us. We had a huge gap in language and understanding. I would say, hey, Valerie, how many prospects do we have? And she would give me an astronomical number. And I went, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to have that much workload available? And she's like, what do you mean? We've only issued 9 proposals. How can you tell me we have 900 prospects and only 9 proposals? Like, I don't understand that difference. It wasn't until we put it down on paper. And Valerie and I have worked together for 4+ years. So once we got it down on paper, we went, oh, there's a difference between a prospect and a lead, and I've been using them interchangeably. So as you look through this process, you can see that there were other things that became identified as we continued to hone in on this process. Then we go into step 3. So step 3 is about reviewing the process. So then it went from this high level, picture down to this is our step. This is our process. So we have the potential clients, then it turns into a prospect. Then we have an action. A prospect shows interest, and now Valerie's going to start her 7-touch process. In the whole goal is to book a discovery call. Now, if a discovery call was not booked, then those people go back into the prospects. If a discovery call is booked, then they become a lead. Now, is it a qualified lead? Should we issue an opportunity? We don't issue proposals for every discovery call that she has. Sometimes when she asks the question of, do you have leadership buy-in? The answer is no. Then we're going to help support you with some documentation and some knowledge, white papers, things like that, ebooks to help support that. So you can build up that buy-in and then introduce the consultant. So is the lead qualified? No. Okay, they go back to prospect. If yes, then we issue an opportunity, and that opportunity, we issue a proposal, and the opportunity is created in our CRM system. So you'll notice that there are many steps before that opportunity ever gets created, because we also don't want to hurt our hit rate and just have an opportunity for every little thing that's out there. That would be not so great for our hit rate. Now we move on to step 4. This is where those notifications, improving the process, those automations come in. So when a lead is entered into the CRM system, contact information is sent to our email system. Now, we never want anybody to get an email from us and be like, how did this happen? Where did this go? So there is a trigger that when that contact information gets pushed over, we use MailChimp. Anytime a new contact is added to MailChimp, that person receives a welcome email from us. The welcome email starts out and says, you're getting this email because you have interacted with a CKC employee and your contact information is what was put into our CRM system, or you were proactive and subscribed to receive our newsletters. We're so excited to have you. Here are some resources. We never want to hit up our clients without providing value. Here are some resources for you to get. Now you'll see that there is a workflow that 7 days after the opportunity is created, it triggers a follow-up. Now, Valerie is very good at following up and has her process, but sometimes those things can fall through the cracks when we get busy, when other things are going on. So we want to have those automated triggers. Now, our 5th step, we went the extra mile because this is what we do for a living, and had an artist create our process so that we can monitor it. Now, Erica's going to drop in a link to this process map so you can download it, a JPEG of it, if you would like to look at it in more detail. But this is everything that I've talked about and more in a very artistic, where you can break it down, sort of infographic. So I hope that that process and walking through an example like that helps you want to tackle your business process and getting all of that down on paper, documented, where you can monitor it, you can identify those gaps, make improvements, review it with more than just yourself. And just remember, Albert Einstein was onto something when he advised that 90% of our effort should be spent on preparation. Big part of preparation is that documentation, and then 10% on execution. So take the time, even if you are years and years and years into a CRM process and a CRM technology, make sure that it is documented. Get it mapped, identify those gaps, review, improve, and then make sure you monitor it. Don't set it and forget it. This is your year. This is your moment. Take control and act and get your client relationship management squared away. I'd like to invite you to our next CRM chat, the 3rd Thursday next week, April 21st, from 1 to 1:30 Central Time. Thank you so much for spending the last 30 minutes with us. We are so excited that you were able to join us, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.